Congress comes to an impasse as to what the Supreme Court ethics could look like, as Alito tells the world that they cannot actually regulate Supreme Court's ethics because of separation of powers. So we'll explore a little bit into Alito's arguments. I'm going to weigh in on this a little bit because I think that there's a mechanism for this, but I don't think that congressional Democrats are going about it the right way. Shocker, of course, but we'll go over some of that, what that means, and where we go from there. Indictment watch continues as Trump employee number 4 is revealed in the superseding indictment. We'll get the name. We'll talk about some of the council conflict of interest that's going on with this case as well. So some things to talk about there, some developments. But thankfully, we're actually not going to be spending a lot of time on this or the Biden stuff, oddly enough. So we'll go over some of that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. The House and Senate have set up for a clash over the defense bill because the House has passed the original version with the travel for abortion and the transgender care. So we'll go over that and what's happening there. And Joe Biden goes to Maine to make an executive order about trying to make more stuff here because, you know, that's how we do it. We force the free market to do what we want it to do. Except he forgets to sign the executive order. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. Happy Friday. Ladies drink free, of course, over here. Well, everybody drinks free because you're probably going to be drinking out of your own stash here tonight. But we have got some news to go over here, and we're going to go through it. We'll talk about that. We've got some weird stuff towards the bottom of the show, too. Like, the Huffington Post really stepped in at this time. Like, they are grasping at straws so hard. I'm surprised they don't get an infection in their hands, but we'll be talking a bit about what's going on there. An activist confronted the Biden admin during Karine Jean-Pierre's press conference here, and it turned out to be a paid Democratic shill. We'll be going over that. Like, this is all the stuff that I set up to talk about that wasn't on the cold open. The cold open is only half the show. We're likely going to fly through this stuff here today because this isn't like most days where we've got 7, 8, 10 explanation articles about what's happened in a news story. It's like, okay, article, follow-up, article, follow-up, article, follow-up. So we have the potential to get through a lot. Of course, that'll depend on what you guys are doing here. Now, I know that it's probably raining in some of the regions that you guys are in, but it's probably also still nice in some of the regions that you guys are in. And I do hope that you guys survived the heat wave because I know it got bad here. The humidity and the heat was taken out of me for the last couple nights, I can say that. But the news stops for nobody, and we've got a little bit to go over here tonight, over here on Contemporary. So let's get into it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Britt, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and The Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine, plus Overruled with KTZed. And even though she is not on the regular rotation here I was on with Brew for Hello Brutiful last night. That is going to be delayed on getting up to the audio platform. There were some extenuating circumstances that came up after the fact, after we did the recording for that. So that's going to be edited a little bit off, and I'm not trying to censor myself for this. I do understand the situation here that's in with this. We'll probably talk about it after it is no longer the case, but for now I'm just saying that some of the things that we talked about last night, because of who Brew is associated with, we could not go live with 4. But go check out Hello Brutiful, and that will be up on the audio platform as soon as it's edited down. So we'll be talking about that as well, and go check that out. And we're going to get right into the news here, because I kind of want to go have a drink. I'm not going to lie. It's been a long couple weeks, and I know I got some stuff to do tomorrow, but I'm telling you right off the bat, my alarm clocks are going to be off tomorrow. And I think I deserve it. And I still think I can get everything done that I need to get done if I turn my alarm clocks off. But my alarm clocks are going off as soon as I'm done here. I'm going to go get hammered, and then we're going to see how long I can actually sleep tonight. But that's for my personal time. Let's get into what you guys are doing over here and what you guys are here to talk about on Contemporary. So we're going to start in with the finance and see what's happening there. A lot of victory lapping going on right now, too, by the way, because inflation is softer than expected. Biden in his cringy speech that we'll be talking about later. I'm taking inflation down faster than they want me to do it, so they might impeach me for fixing inflation too fast, man. And again, I've yet to see any negative inflation to bring us back to the prices that we were at here, but go on. We'll talk about that. And my wages matched with inflation finally, but I also moved across the state and took a job that actually had overtime. Results not typical right now as well, so keep that in mind. But let's get into the finance. Let's go on here. Let's get the live chat up here. I do take live chat through all platforms as well. Rumble, main platform. So if you got something you want to weigh into with what we're saying here, be glad to read some of it on the air. Now, do keep in mind, we're on YouTube for at least part of the viewing audience here. So they'll take stuff down if they don't like what's coming through this microphone. So do keep that in mind. And let's get started. We're going to start with the Dow, of course. The Dow spent the day up again, steadily up, with one major drop-off in the middle of the day, not quite reaching down to the previous close, of course, before coming back and recovering, and staying on a fairly flat trajectory on the day today. The Dow is at 35,459.29. That is up 176.57 points, or a 0.5% on the day. So they got some of back what they lost yesterday. They didn't get everything back that they lost yesterday, but they got some of it back here. So we'll be talking about finance in just a moment. On your Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is sitting at $29,297 and 60 US cents. That is up $82 and 70 US cents, like about 0.25% on the day gain for Bitcoin. So it looks like those of you who have some of that in your portfolio have won slightly on the day. Congratulations. And on the gas prices in the Madison area, still steady. $3.50, $3.50, $3.50. There is an outlier that dropped a little bit below what the rest of the outliers were sitting at, now down to $3.29, but it looks like $3.50 is the prevailing cost around the Madison area, with $3.40s and a $3.30, I believe, still sitting out here. No, $3.30 is gone, so we're at $3.40 as the lower price. Where am I going with this? It has been a long 2 weeks. $3.40 is your average low, with $3.29 being a major outlier around the rest of the region. So that is what we see coming out of that. Let's grab one from CNBC, talk about what happened on the markets today. S&P 500 closes nearly 1% higher on softening inflation data. NAB's third week of gains from Sarah Min and Alex Herring. Stocks rose on Friday with the Dow and the S&P closing out their third winning weeks in a row, as a measure of inflation closely watched by the Federal Reserve came in its lowest in nearly 2 years. The Dow jumped 176.57 points, or a 0.5% to 35,459.29. The S&P added almost a full percent to 45.8223. The Nasdaq gained 1.9 to 14.316.66, the mark of the beast, of course. All three major averages notched weekly gains, with the 30-stock average up by about 0.6%, two-thirds. On Thursday, the Dow ended a 13-day win streak, a length not seen since '87. The S&P advanced 1.01, and the tech-heavy index is up 2.02. This week, investors cheered data showing cooling inflation and stronger-than-expected earnings reports that supported the case the U.S. could avoid a recession. Yeah, okay. On Friday, the June data for the Personal Consumption and Expenditures Price Index continued to show easing inflation. The gauge showed core PCE gained 0.2% month over month, in line with the 0.2% increase expected by economists polled by Dow Jones. Core PCE rose 4.1% from the year-ago period, lower than the expected 4.2%. How is this still a win? Oh, we're doing better than we thought we are. Your core inflation is still up 4.1% year over year. Excluding volatile food prices. How is this a win? The data is of particular interest after the central bank raised interest rates earlier this week. In a widely expected move, the Fed targets inflation at 2% annually. In the wake of stronger than expected GDP, a better than expected earnings season, this could be the catalyst to send the market to new highs, wrote Gina Bolvin, president of Bolvin Wealth Management Group. Earnings season continued with Dow member Procter & Gamble shares gaining nearly 3%. The consumer goods company behind Tide and other brands beat analyst earnings and revenue expectations in its most recent quarter. Intel jumped 6.6% as investors applauded a return of profitability, while Roku climbed 31% a day after beating Wall Street expectations on both the top and bottom lines. So that is what we are seeing on the markets today. I don't believe a lot of this, by the way. I'm reading what CNBC wants us to believe. I don't believe a lot of it. I look around myself, and the big one for me is that I come in here every day and read to you another 3-digit layoff every single day. Now, I need you to explain to me how everything is doing good when we're losing employees left and right in this. They are filling some of the jobs, I will admit to that, some of the old jobs that have been laying out stagnant forever. But when we have layoff after layoff after layoff, I mean, this is the same thing that we saw in 2007. Just a series of mass layoffs with a housing market that couldn't move and didn't move, and inventory not sitting on the market until people were at their last leg. And yeah, we did see a big surge in jobs, especially coming into 2009 when people, and 12 and 13 too as well, when the ACA both went into effect, where people, the only way they could afford to have the insurance that the government mandated to them was to have 2 or 3 jobs on top of what they got laid off to. This is going to hit hard. And I'm preparing for it as much as I can. Plan in another row, load up a couple more, and get another pack of canning jars, because, I mean, worst case scenario, you can up a bunch of vegetables and you have vegetables for a week. But reading from the layoffs report today, Yellow is starting mass layoffs and preparing to file bankruptcy soon, employees say. From James Dornbrook, staff writer for the Kansas City Business Journal. Based on provided tips and posts to Reddit, it appears that Yellow is laying off the bulk of its non-union employees and preparing for an imminent bankruptcy filing. Company officials have not responded to requests for comment. Wow, that's it? That's the whole article? Oh, subscribers only! Kind of interesting that they hide this one behind the paywall here. Let me see, by the way, if we can archive this, and somebody archived this one already. No? Well, that's going to be our layoffs report then today, that Yellow is starting to lay off hundreds of employees and file bankruptcy soon. I'm a professional at this, I promise. Sometimes you screw up on things. One thing to point out, like, when the trucking industry is starting to lose people, I mean, that's a job that needs to be there all the time. No matter how bad the economy gets, anything that you have in your home, anything that you've bought, anything that you get out of the store, anything you want to get out of the store has to come in one of those. It can get from point to point by rail, but to get from the terminal down to the store, or down to your house, or down to any number of places where commerce can be, the last step still comes in one of those. So when you're starting to see layoffs there, you're starting to see, hey, let's start to pay attention here. But that's what we have coming for that. Let's talk about the separation of powers from the Associated Press to start out with today. Justice Alito says Congress lacks the power to impose an ethics code on the Supreme Court. This coming on the heels of an argument where Democrats were begging and demanding that Republicans actually come in and help them to force an ethics code down the Supreme Court's throats. Let's read from the Associated Press. We will be talking about this in just a bit. But this is from Mark Sherman. Samuel Alito says Congress lacks the power to impose a code of ethics on the Supreme Court, making him the first member of the court to take a public stand against proposals in Congress to toughen ethics rules for justices in response to increased scrutiny of their activities beyond the bench. I know this is a controversial view, but I'm willing to say it. No provision in the Constitution gives the authority to regulate Supreme Court, period, Alito said in an interview he gave to the Wall Street Journal opinion page. An account of the interview, which the paper said took place in New York in early July, was published on Friday. Democrats last week pushed the Supreme Court ethics legislation through a Senate committee, though the bill's prospects in the full Senate are dim. All federal judges, other than justices, already adhere to ethics codes that was developed by the federal judiciary, but the Supreme Court's unique status, it's the only federal court created by the Constitution, puts it outside the reach of those standards that apply to other federal jurists. Democrats first sought to address that after ProPublica reported earlier this year that Clarence Thomas participated in lavish vacations and a real estate deal with a top Republican donor, and after Chief Justice Roberts declined to testify before the committees about the ethics of the court. Since then, ProPublica also revealed that Alito had taken a luxury vacation in Alaska with a Republican donor who had business interests before the court. The Associated Press reported in early June that Sotomayor, aided by her staff, has advanced sales of her books through college visits over the past decade. The 73-year-old Alito, who joined the court in 2006, has rejected the idea that he should have disclosed the Alaska trips and stepped away from the cases involving the donor hedge fund owner, Paul Singer. Now see, I do think that he should have stepped away from these and not maybe taken these trips, but as far as being punished for it, it's not explicitly against the rules, so they can't go back and retroactively punish him for it. Do I think it was in bad taste for him to go on vacation with a donor? Absolutely. But again, the retroactive punishment, we don't do that here. Alito penned his own Wall Street Journal op-ed, which was published hours before the ProPublica posted its story. Alito said he is unwilling to leave allegations unanswered, though he acknowledged judges and justices typically don't respond to their critics. Well, and a part of that is, it's part of the reason that they're appointed for life, and they're appointed instead of elected as, like, Supreme Court justices in my state, Wisconsin, are. And that does vary state to state. I do think, if I remember correctly, they're appointed in some states and they're elected in other states. I know in my state we have an election for them, and they do have a term. But on the federal judiciary, so they're not beholden to voters, so they're not urged to vote a certain way because of the voting group that put them into office or something. That's why they're appointed. So they can be free from this kind of thing. And so at certain points I've said to myself, nobody else is going to do this, so I have to defend myself, he said in the newest column. While no other justices has spoken so definitively about ethics legislation, Roberts has raised questions about Congress's authority to oversee the High Court. In his year-end report in 2011, Roberts wrote that the justices comply with legislation that requires their annual financial disclosures and limits their outside earned income. The court has never addressed whether Congress may impose these requirements on the Supreme Court. The justices nevertheless comply with these provisions, Roberts wrote. The justices have so far resisted adopting an ethics code on their own, although Roberts said in May that there is more the court can do to adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct without providing specifics. The column is co-written by James Taranto, the paper's editorial feature editor, and David Rivkin, a Washington lawyer. Rivkin represents Leonard Leo, the one-time leader of the conservative legal group, the Federalist Society, in his dealings with the Senate Democrats, who want details of Leo's dealings with the justices. Leo helped arrange Alito's trip to Alaska. That's definitely not a conflict of interest. Jeez. So, and again, when we look at this, is there a place, does Congress have the authority to do so? And I don't believe that they do. Should the Supreme Court have a code of ethics? Yes. And again, while I don't necessarily believe that the justices on either side of the aisle, and they shouldn't be partisan to begin with, but that's not the world we live in. But none of these justices should be schmoozing with donors. And they all do it. I'm not stupid. And I don't think that it's right. But again, we can't go back and retroactively punish them for that, which, by the way, if Congress were to push through a code of ethics like they're saying they're going to do so, that's going to be one of the first calls on social media, is to go back and impeach Clarence Thomas because he's compromised, because he violated the rules of ethics. There is going to be a push. Maybe not at the federal level, like at the congressional level, but definitely on the grassroots groundswell level, to have anybody appointed by a conservative impeached for violation of ethics, especially when you have Alito, Thomas, and Roberts, are all pretty much the reason that ProPublica is pushing for this right now. On the other side of that, conservative activist rejects Senate demand for help in Supreme Court probe. Political retaliation. This is from Fox News. Andrew Mark Miller reporting. KTZed is with us here. KTZed. Call up some friends. Bring some friends in here with you. Tell a friend. Tell 10 friends. Or maybe KTZed is just calling me a hoe, which, she wouldn't be the first person to do so. I've been called that a lot since my ex-girlfriend broke up with me, and I kind of went a little bit off the deep end. Conservative activist Leonard Leo told Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee he will not be a part of their investigation into the travel habits of conservative Supreme Court justices, and cited the Bill of Rights and liberal hypocrisy as reasons. Your investigation of Mr. Leo infringes on 2 provisions of the Bill of Rights, lawyers for Leo wrote in the letter to Democratic Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Dick Durbin, which was obtained by Fox News Digital. By selectively targeting Mr. Leo for investigation on a politically charged basis, while ignoring other potential sources of information on the asserted topic of interest who are similarly situated to Mr. Leo, but have different political views that are more consistent with those in the committee majority, your inquiry appears to be political retaliation against a private citizen in violation of the First Amendment, they wrote. This month, Whitehouse and Durbin sent a letter to Leo, and billionaires Paul Singer and Rob Hartley II, demanding more information regarding a ProPublica report that Alito accepted and failed to disclose. A luxury Alaskan fishing vacation in 2008 with the 2 billionaires, Leo allegedly organized the trip. The senators asked for an itemized list of gifts and payments from Leo, or groups he has associated with dating back decades, and related to any Supreme Court justice he has associated with. And again, why? The problem with this, and I've said this since they started talking about this, is it's not explicitly against the rules for them to take these trips. It is shady. Do not get me wrong. You have a donor that's expecting you to go back and vote a certain way on cases. Whether it's explicitly said or not, there are interests in this. The situation with Thomas was a little bit different because at the time, and at the time of any of the luxury vacations that Thomas got, the gentleman, and I cannot think of his name right off the bat, but the gentleman who was taking Thomas on the luxury vacations had nothing pending before the Supreme Court. Does appear that Mr. Leo does. But unless it's against the rules, I mean, you can go back and uncover as much stuff as you want from the history. And it doesn't amount to an entire hill of beans. To date, Chief Justice Roberts has barely acknowledged, much less investigated or sought to fix ethics crises swirling around the highest court. So if the court won't investigate or act, Congress must. White House and Durbin said in a press release. Answers to these questions will help the committee's work to create reliable ethics guardrails in the court. Under Congress's clearly established oversight and legislative authority. That's gray, by the way. Leo's lawyers responded by saying Democrats' request doesn't comport with the First Amendment and other parts of the Constitution, much less the Fifth, which there's a poll, by the way, on Twitter, where I'm asking, and this goes, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the Trump thing, but whether or not providing your own receipts, or in the case of the poll, any surveillance video that you personally took or your company took, and being compelled to issue that to the court in your own prosecution, I would say that's self-incrimination. I would say that's in violation of the Fifth Amendment. And while there's no crime in this, asking Mr. Leo to turn over his records without a subpoena, without a crime, and without an investigation, I'm pretty sure that violates the Fourth and, again, possibly the Fifth. For similar reasons, your inquiry cannot be reconciled with the equal protection components of due process clause of the Fifth Amendment, and also unreasonable search and seizure. And regardless of its other constitutional infirmities, it appears that your investigation lacks a valid legislative purpose, because the legislation of the committee is considering would be unconstitutional if enacted, the lawyers said. I'd be interested to see how that goes as well. Because legally it would be a conflict of interest for the judges to rule on the constitutionality of something that affects them. Would that kick to a federal court at that point? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what the process actually would be for that, but yeah, I wouldn't think that you would want the Supreme Court to rule on the constitutionality of something that would adversely affect them. Would you? But we'll see what happens there. Let's talk the Donald, which thankfully we won't have to do that for the entire show like we have been lately. Donald Trump says his lawyers have met with prosecutors ahead of possible 2020 election indictment. From the Associated Press, Eric Tucker reporting. Lawyers for Trump met Thursday with members of Special Counsel Jack Smith's team ahead of a potential indictment over the former president's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election in the run-up to the January 6th Selfie Fest at the U.S. Capitol, according to a person familiar with the matter. Trump himself confirmed the meeting in a post on his Truth Social network, writing, "My attorneys just had a productive meeting with the DOJ this morning, explaining in detail that I did nothing wrong, was advised by many lawyers, and that an indictment of me would only further destroy our country." He added that no indication of notice was given during the meeting. It was not immediately clear what was discussed at that meeting, though a similar sit-down with lawyers occurred in the days before Trump was indicted last month on charges of illegally retaining classified documents. Thursday's meeting included Trump attorney John Laurel, the person familiar with the case, who spoke on to the Associated Press on the condition of anonymity. That's Mogwai's cat, isn't it? Anonymous sources, are you watching? If you are, go scratch Mogwai. Get him over here. He's got a lot of shit to talk right now. Lauro said in a Fox News television interview last week that his client had done nothing wrong. The status of these secretive grand jury proceedings remain unclear despite building speculation that a criminal case could be near. No indictment was filed Thursday, though Trump did face new charges in the classified documents case, with persecutors accusing him of asking a staffer to delete security camera footage in an apparent effort to obstruct the investigation. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. So we're on indictment watch still. We have not seen anything yet. I don't know if they're going to... No, they wouldn't drop it over the weekend because it's going to be in bankers' business hours. So it's going to be between 9 and 5 on a weekday. And everybody's just going to sit on the edge of their seat and bicker about it and bitch about it on Twitter. Or X, I'm sorry. But I want to talk a bit about the indictment, the one that came down yesterday. Revised Trump indictment raises new questions about lawyer conflicts of interest. From Laura Jarrett. For Donald Trump, loyalty was always key. I value loyalty above everything else. It's a striking reminder for those who now face legal jeopardy for their association with the former president. This week, the legal risks for two aides who've worked for him in Florida came into sharper view, but their once overlapping representation is also raising fresh legal and ethics questions based on revelations in the new or superseding indictment unsealed on Thursday. The initial indictment charged Trump and his valet, Walton Nauta, but the new indictment involves a third individual, the Mar-a-Lago property manager, Carlos de Oliveira. It's de Oliveira's interactions with yet another Mar-a-Lago employee, the director of information technology, that's raising eyebrows. This is, by the way, a pressure campaign. They're trying to get him to flip. Carlos, come in here, man. You just tell us that he had the documents, testify in front of a court, what the documents were, say that you saw him. I don't care if you saw him or not. Flip on him, and this all goes away. Unnamed IT person, which actually is named later on here. Hey, just say that he wanted you to delete everything. Just say it. We'll make sure everything goes away. NPC News has confirmed the person named is Yuscil Taveras, and he's described in the court papers as employee number 4. According to prosecutors, after Trump's attorneys were served with a grand jury subpoena requiring he turn over security camera footage from Mar-a-Lago, de Oliveira asked Taveras for a private conversation where he told him that the boss wanted the server deleted. Taveras balked, according to the superseding indictment, but de Oliveira pressed for a solution again, saying, "The boss wanted the server deleted, and what are we going to do?" So, I want to talk about this for just a second, and this has raised, I did start a poll over on Twitter, rather X, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that this is going in a different direction than I thought it would, because I would think that people would be all for self-incrimination. So, I put this up here with the question, does a subpoena of personal security recordings violate the Fifth Amendment, specifically the provision of self-incrimination? Now, as I said yesterday, if this is the security camera outside the 7-Eleven that catches you doing a crime, then they go put the elbow on to the 7-Eleven guy and then have their translators come out and, wow, I probably can't say that on YouTube, but you get the idea. They go in there and they say, hey, we want to subpoena this evidence because we think that this could help in bringing justice to a crime or getting rid of a political enemy, depending on what the situation is behind it. But if it's something that you, like on your personal property, like your Ring doorbell, I think that would be a fantastic one to do. You're sitting out, we'll do a small potatoes crime too, as an example for this. You're sitting out, you get out of the car, you're a little bit drunk, and your friend gets out of the car with you and pulls out and rips a gigantic bong and then hands you the gigantic bong. And then you do it right in front of your Ring camera and catches it all on video because you're staggering around drunk and it's picking up your motion, essentially. And then for whatever reason on the other end of that, you get popped for something else. And then they add a modifier for drug charges because they say, hey, on Ring, we have evidence that you were smoking a whole bunch of weed. Ring may be a bad example for this because what's up on their cloud is technically their property, not yours. But like, say you have it on a closed circuit system. And now they want to subpoena that. I would call that self-incrimination. And I would say, honestly, you should be able to tell the authorities, whoever they be, hey, get fucked. If you have such concrete evidence, you can prove it without my closed circuit camera. That's the case that I'm making on that. And I do think that it would be against the Fifth Amendment as a provision of self-incrimination. I'd like to know what you guys think, too. A lot more, well, there are only 8 votes right now, but more no's than yes. Which surprised me. I actually thought this would be a slam dunk one. There's also an active discussion in the Discord, if you're in the Discord, talking about the same thing. Let's go back to NPC News. What exactly happened after the server, or to the server after that point, is unclear. But Nauta later calls another unnamed Trump employee and said words to the effect of, someone just wants to make sure that Carlos is good. The unnamed employee assures Nauta that De Oliveira is loyal, and on the same day, Trump called De Oliveira and told De Oliveira that Trump would get De Oliveira an attorney. Based on the Federal Election Commission filings and the public reporting, it appears that Trump made good on that promise. Trump's PAC paid $189,040 in 2022 to the law firm, where De Oliveira's lawyer, John Irving, is a partner. Irving isn't representing De Oliveira alone, and some of that money may be related to other clients. Irving has been reported to represent several others close to Trump, including Peter Navarro, Stephen Miller, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, and many may have other witnesses as clients. When contacted by NPC News, Irving declined to comment about De Oliveira's indictment or his representation, which would be a conflict of interest for him to do anyway. So there are a few things that go with this. And they want to talk about conflicts of interest. Now, what's really blown my mind about this entire thing, as we've gone and as we watched it go, is the crux of Jack Smith's case revolves around attorney-client privilege conversations between Trump and his attorney, which, because of a major crimes provision, were able to be taken essentially and used, even though in any other crime in the universe these would be privileged. I mean, there's a reason that they have attorney-client privilege. So if you do have a question, or God forbid you actually do have to admit guilt to something and say, hey, what do we do about this? I might have actually done this. It can't be used by a court of law. So there's some developments going with this, and some questions, definitely. We got the identifier here, so Rand Paul weighing in on the impeachment side of things. Rand Paul blasts Dems for setting terrible precedent with impeachment. From Daniel Chayton. Also, I gotta get the live chat back up here. Up on Rumble. If you guys prefer Rumble, that option is always out there. With House Republicans floating an impeachment inquiry against President Biden, Senator Rand Paul chastised Democrats on Thursday for how they used the process against former President Trump. In an interview with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business, the lawyer said Republicans should be better than Democrats, whom he said rushed to impeachment during the last administration. Do I still have the video up? I probably closed it. I closed it, and I thought that I might have. Hold on. Luckily, it's saved up on my Google searches. So, just a reminder of how eager they were, and as Rand Paul says correctly, how they rushed out to impeachment.
People love you, and you win. Woo! And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
They legitimately made that, it was a political game when 2018 rolled around. Look, I think there needs to be a continued investigation, Paul said, referring to committee-level probes into the Biden family and concerns Republicans have about a pattern of millions of dollars flowing from foreign nations under suspicious circumstances. Paul suggested that congressional investigators keep the pressure on the FBI to make disclosures and track down the 17 audio recordings of Biden and his son Hunter mentioned in an FBI document detailing the claims by a confidential human source concerning the alleged multi-million-dollar bribery scheme and an Ukrainian oligarch. Yeah, I'd kind of like to hear those myself, honestly. I think that should be fair game. Still, Paul argued that it would be premature for the GOP-led House to escalate their investigative work into an impeachment inquiry. Well, you're on the other chamber and the other side of the Capitol, so you don't necessarily get a say in this one. Look, I think it would be better to gather more before an impeachment. I think there's going to be an impeachment. If there's going to be an impeachment, let's have quite a bit of evidence out there so that the American people are actually behind this, Paul said. It doesn't matter. It falls dead in the Senate anyway. So, but Rand is right off of this, even if he's wrong about whether or not they should have one. He's right about the fact that they made it into a political game, so it's fair game for Kevin McCarthy and the Freedom Caucus to come back forward and say, nope, we're going to have an impeachment, and we're going to have another one, and another one, and another one. I don't specifically think that it's the right thing to do, but again, it's fair game. McCarthy's people didn't make those rules. Let's talk about the defense bill from Politico. Senate okays defense bill setting up a clash with House over abortion and LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYAEIOU sometimes Y measures. From Connor O'Brien and Joe Gould. The Senate passed its annual Pentagon policy bill in a blowout vote on Thursday, setting up bad alliance with a conservative version that narrowly cleared the Republican-led House this month. Wouldn't it be nice if the NDAA just did get funded? I mean, I'm down for that. The bipartisan 86-11 vote capped off 2 weeks of debate on the $886 billion bill, with a B that saw the upper chamber sidestep many of the culture war issues that House members approved largely along party lines. Next, Senate and House leaders must iron out the differences and produce a compromise version of the annual National Defense Authorization Act that can win President Biden's signature and continue a 62-year streak of the bill becoming law each year. But the disagreements run deep in the competing bills. House Republicans passed a more partisan defense bill that includes provisions to undo the Pentagon's abortion travel policy, that doesn't belong in there anyway. Block funding for surgeries and hormone therapy for transgender troops, and limit diversity training in programs. All but 4 House Democrats opposed the final bill, which in other years has been bipartisan. Well, that's because they all get money back out of their Raytheon stocks. Those House actions were not starters in the Senate, which is led by Democrats but still requires bipartisan support to pass bills. What's happening in the Senate is a stark contrast to the partisan race at the bottom we saw in the House. Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer said, House Republicans are pushing partisan legislation that has zero chance of passing. The conventional wisdom is that the most hardline provisions in the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Republicans packed into their bill to win conservative votes won't survive negotiations with the Senate. Still, Senate Republicans scored some conservative wins over their version. The legislation prohibits the Pentagon from creating positions or filling vacancies related to diversity, equity, and inclusion until the Government Accountability Office issues a report on the Pentagon's workforce for those programs. It also caps the salaries for personnel who deal with diversity and inclusion issues. Republicans also won inclusion of language forcing the Pentagon to dispose of unused border wall material and produce a roadmap to counter drug and human trafficking on the southern border. They won't. In the run-up to the final vote on Thursday, the Senate did tackle some tough amendments. Democrats rebuffed a proposal from Roger Marshall of Kansas that would have limited specific flags that can be flown over military bases and other public buildings. Similar proposals have been criticized by Democrats because they would effectively ban the pride flag. Bipartisan majorities also crushed 11-88, an offering from Bernie Sanders to slash the Pentagon budget by 10%. And when, by the way, Bernie Sanders is the only person in the Senate that's making sense on something like that, you know we spend way too much money on the military, or the piggy bank that funds the military but also funds a bunch of pet projects. Let me be a little bit more specific about the NDAA. So, this is going to get interesting. And we'll watch this. We'll see what happens for this. It's going to be a clash. In other congressional news, Cori Bush got in the news. Democratic Rep. Cori Bush once again screams racist after not getting her way, this time targeting Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise cannot catch a break, you guys. I mean, homie got shot. And now he's the target of every other attack from the left, and he's going to continue to be the target of every other local attack and attack news story and everything else from the left until he gets shot again. Mr. Scott is here. Welcome. Cori Bush of Missouri, fresh off another anti-Israel boycott because, well, the Blaze editorializes as much as Politico does, has reissued her go-to smear, this time targeting Republican House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Scalise touted the successful passage of House Republicans' first fiscal 2024 spending bill Thursday, allocating funding for military construction projects to the Department of Veterans Affairs and other agencies. Roll call indicated the $317.4 billion military construction VA bill passed in a 219 to 211 vote, with Democrats united in opposition to the funding for veterans initiatives. Upon the bill's passage, Scalise announced that Friday's votes would be canceled and that the August recess was to commence, meaning the $25.3 billion agriculture bill would have to wait. You've got 3 days till August. Get your ass back in your seat. Wait, no. Never mind. If they're not there, then nothing gets done. Okay, go. August recess. Get out of there. Some Democrats are upset over not getting their way, erupted in unceremonious fits of rage. Bush was among them. Let's watch. Thank you, C-SPAN, for catching this.
Would yield one more time to the gentlelady.
Be in order.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
Are those even worth strikeable?
The gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Leader, we are going to continue to stand in this.
Let's watch that again because they did mute some of this back out of here.
Would yield one more time to the gentlelady.
Be in order.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House.
Classy. Very classy. But I mean, it does go on to the actual way that the House used to run. I mean, they used to have fist fights, like right down here. So I'm not entirely opposed to the fact that they're being rowdy. I know that the decorum means that they can't be rowdy anymore like they used to back in the late 18th century and early 19th century, but we still have some fun watching this. But Bush also, by the way, doubled down on this after the fact. I didn't get to finish. Their bills are also sexist, patriarchal, xenophobic, classist, homophobic, and transphobic. Yep. Sure are. We believe you at this point. Let's talk about Biden and Maine, and what could actually possibly be the biggest gaffe of his presidency. From W to MTW, President Biden highlights Bidenomics and touts manufacturing growth on a visit to Maine. From Phil Hirschkorn, President Biden landed in Maine on Friday on his first trip to the state since winning the White House. Biden last visited the state in 2018 on a book tour for his memoir about his late son Beau, who died of cancer in 2015. Biden did not campaign in Maine before its March 2020 Democratic presidential primary, which he won, or ahead of the November general, which he also carried the state, though his wife Jill appeared in Maine for him, and he's also returned as First Lady. I mean, of course he didn't go there because he was campaigning from the basement. Here we are, landing in Maine.
Oh, they're coming. He's coming.
He's coming. Man, he just looks sad at this point. Alright, that's enough of that. In Maine today, the president said Bidenomics is strengthening the middle class. Instead of exporting American jobs, we're bringing people back to work from all the jobs we shut them down from. American jobs, and we're exporting American products, he says. Reading on, early Friday afternoon, Mr. Biden made remarks at Auburn Manufacturing Incorporated, a company that produces heat and fire-resistant fabrics, primarily with domestic-made materials. Wages are up after being adjusted for inflation. Lie. Biden remarked as he criticized trickle-down economics. We created 13 million new jobs. Lie. More than before the pandemic. Lie. Nearly 28,700 here in Maine. A lie also, but if you assume the truth in the two statements that he already lied about before, that would technically be correct. The president says Bidenomics is strengthening the middle class. Instead of exporting American jobs, we're creating American jobs, man, and we're exporting American products. Lie. CEO Kathy Leonard founded the company in '79 when WMTW Maine's Total Coverage visited the manufacturing facility in 2021. It had 50 employees. He'll discuss how Bidenomics is revitalizing the American manufacturing and bringing in investments. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters Thursday. Big investments that many cities haven't seen before as it relates to jobs, as it relates to making sure we're making things in America again. She said the admin invested $1.5 billion in Maine, including $570 million to develop high-speed internet service. So, he seems to think that his stuff is working here. From Bangor Daily News. I archived it, so the name of the publication wasn't up here. Biden to sign Make It Here executive order on Maine trip. Putting his finger on the scales in the private sector yet again. So, the sun is shining, but I can hear thunder. I don't think it's getting picked up by the mic, but I can definitely hear it in my headphones. Or around my headphones, rather. From Michael Shepard. In Maine on Friday, President Biden will sign an executive order aimed at boosting domestic manufacturing of new inventions. A White House official said late on Thursday. Auburn will be the setting for Biden's afternoon remarks on economic policy. The president will tout manufacturing boom of 800,000 jobs nationally since he took office. Again, people going back to work. Getting their jobs back. The subject has resonance in Maine, which lost nearly half of its manufacturing jobs between 1990 and 2021, and has seen only a small recovery of late due to a slow transition from legacy industries. Among the highlights of the Democrats' tenure so far are the Bipartisan CHIPS Act, which provided funding for domestic semiconductor production, and all the money to go back to Japan, by the way. And the Inflation Production Act, a Democrat climate bill that includes manufacturing incentives. The Invent It Here, Make It Here order the president will sign on Friday attempts to build on that by ordering agencies to use existing power to put more government money behind supporting domestic manufacturing of emerging technologies and raising standards for government purchasing of products that cannot be made domestically. Without legislation, I don't believe he can do that either, by the way. It's a good idea in theory, don't get me wrong. But unless there's corresponding legislation to go with it, to compel American manufacturers by threat of arrest or fines, I don't necessarily know that this has any teeth, except for the fact that it makes it look good. The backdrop for Biden's remarks will be Auburn Manufacturing, a company that makes heat-resistant textiles, has been fighting a years-long trade war with China over subsidies to its competitors there. The company has experienced double-digit growth due in part to Biden's policies, the White House has said. Maine has gained 1,200 manufacturing jobs during Biden's tenure, although that's one of the weakest recoveries among states amid national gains. Yeah, it's a recovery. It's not new jobs. Over the last year, the state has actually lost jobs that canceled out gains at emerging manufacturers. However, wages rose by 6.6% from June 2022 through last month, according to federal data. And of course, that's after rising by only 1 to 2% when inflation was 9.9%. They'll leave that part out. Biden making jokes. Biden jokes that Republicans may impeach him because inflation is starting to cool down. You lying piece of crap. The Associated Press reporting Josh Boeck and Sung Min Kim. President Biden, buoyed by new signs the economy isn't continuing in the upswing, took a swipe on Friday at House Republicans' flirtations with an impeachment inquiry, quipping that GOP lawmakers may decide to impeach him because the inflation is cooling down. It's still at 3%, but it's cooling down. Standing in a textile manufacturing facility in Auburn, Biden pointed to inflation statistics that showed the U.S. had the lowest rate of price increases among the world's biggest economies, which I saw a tweet about this yesterday when he tried to pull this on Twitter. We have the lowest rate of inflation among the G7 group. That's like saying we're the prettiest horse in the glue factory. Though he was careful not to say he was not taking a victory lap on the economy, Biden suggested that his Republican opponents in Congress may need to find a fresh line of attack against him because of improving economic circumstances. Well, and again, everything looks like it's improving economic circumstances, even though it's not. When the first thing that you did in office was shut down energy production and burn the economy down. What was left after your lackeys in the state level burned it down to make sure that the former president didn't stay in office. Maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down, man. I don't know. I'd love that one, man. Come on. Smug piece of crap. Well, he got smug, and then he did something stupid. This is an op-ed, by the way, from Tim Meads. So the opinions expressed in this article are the opinions of Tim Meads, and not necessarily the opinions of the Daily Wire and its owners, or the opinions of Turns of Pages Productions, Contemporary, or your host, Jay Edgar. Biden forgets to sign executive order he flew all the way to Maine to sign. From Tim Meads. President Biden's upcoming beach week can't come soon enough. The poor guy forgot to sign an executive order that he flew all the way to Maine to sign on Friday. Perhaps the bigger part of the story can be found in the Democrats' newfound obsession with the GDP. This morning, Biden flew to Auburn, Maine to tout his new Invent It Here, Make It Here executive order. Apparently, wanting things to be made in America was only racist when former President Trump was in office. I remember that, actually. The whole point of the trip was to sign the order in Maine as a way to show his commitment to manufacturing jobs. However, the data indicate that Maine has lost 0.5% of its manufacturing jobs between June of 2022 and June of 2023 per CBS News. As for the event today, Biden was typical Biden. He left the stage and had to be instructed to return to put his John Hancock on the damn thing. By that point, the crowd was already departing and his exit music was getting started. Let's watch.
Bad news is I'm coming back to shake your hand, but I forgot I didn't sign the order. All that talk and no action.
While there, he again insulted voters' intelligence by claiming that nobody knew what a supply chain was until the pandemic.
I decided we're never going to be in a position we're not the beginning of the supply chain. A phrase I don't think any of us really heard until 3 years ago. So we went to work.
Bitch, I worked in logistics for almost my entire life. You want to talk about and insult your voters' intelligence again? Well, your voters will sit there and lap that shit up. Maine Governor Janet Mills also praised Biden at the event, saying, "I want to thank him for revitalizing our economy. Maine and the nation are seeing an increase in the GDP statewide and nationally," the Maine Wire reported. While it's true the America's GDP grew over the past 2 quarters, that doesn't equate to a strong economy. Whenever politicians or party hacks rely on the GDP to make their argument for a strong economy, perhaps we should be reminded of what the late Senator Robert Kennedy had to say about the GDP. Gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry and the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America except why we are proud that we are Americans. And Meads goes on to go talk about a lot of the other problems that are going on with our country. But a reminder that our GDP sucks. The benchmark for GDP growth is 3%. I don't know about the last quarter. I would actually have to go back and look at our numbers for the last quarter, but I know that quarter one of 2023 and all quarters of 2021 and 2022, if they were positive, were sub 3%. Biden has yet to have a year of 3% growth. And by the way, Obama also did not have any years of 3% growth. He had a couple quarters that cleared it. But averaged out on years, he did not have a single year of 3% growth. Which is strange because 2009, 2010, there should have been no reason that we didn't see double-digit GDP growth. $81 million votes. All right, Bo Bergdahl is up on the news. Federal judge vacates Bo Bergdahl's conviction and dishonorable discharge. From Piper Hudspeth Blackburn. A federal judge on Tuesday vacated Bo Bergdahl's dishonorable discharge from the U.S. Army, roughly 6 years after the former soldier was convicted of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy after abandoning his outpost on Afghanistan in 2009. U.S. District Judge Reggie B. Walton found the military judge who had ordered the dishonorable discharge had failed to disclose that he had applied to be an immigration judge, a job with the executive branch during the Trump administration, in a possible conflict of interest. Then military judge Army Colonel Jeffrey Nance oversaw the court-martial and ruled in 2017 that Bergdahl would receive a dishonorable discharge from the U.S. Army but avoid prison time. The former soldier's rank was reduced to from sergeant to private, and he was ordered to pay $10,000 from his salary. Walton's 63-page decision vacated all the judge's rulings after October 2017 when he applied for the immigration post. Because the military judge was applying to an executive branch position, a situation in which he might reasonably be expected to appeal to the president's expressed interest, and yes, the Donald was expressly interested in seeing Bo Bergdahl prosecuted. In the plaintiff's conviction and punishment, Walton said that a reasonable person could doubt the judge's ability to remain neutral. Bergdahl disappeared from his base in Afghanistan in June of 2009 and was held in captivity by the Taliban until May of 2014. He said that he was tortured and beaten during his 5-year captivity, spending 2 months chained to a bed or locked in a cage while his health deteriorated. He has also said that he was completely isolated and told he would be killed or never see his family again. Released in a controversial exchange for 5 Guantanamo Bay detainees, Bergdahl pleaded guilty in October 2017, facing the possibility of life in prison. Kind of sounds to me like he got railroaded. And one for me, and I know I've seen the microphone in Mr. Zed's office, but I'd kind of like to see him cover some military topics like this because I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know enough about this particular situation where I can say Bergdahl was in the right or in the wrong. It sounds like he got railroaded, and this was the right decision, but there is a lot more nuance to this than I know about, and I already know that there's more nuance to this than I know about. And one of the things that I will say about the fact that it's all been vacated is there are probably still going to be instances in Bergdahl's life where he's going to have difficulty, especially around his Second Amendment rights. And I know somebody who went out, did his time, military, for, well, I don't know what the charges were exactly, but I know this person very well. And then as a civilian, has no charges against him, has a completely clean record. But with a court-martial, he's not supposed to be barred from owning a firearm. But it still pops up on his NICS. And then they have to go back and do it manually for him. I've been with him when he bought a firearm. So that is something that Bo Bergdahl is going to have to deal with for the rest of his life, most likely. I would like to learn more about that. I'll schedule a conversation with Mr. Zed sometime. Maybe we'll do this in December or so. Because I think I'm supposed to be down there for that. On the other side of the aisle, from the post-millennial, Biden admin forces family of soldier killed in Afghanistan withdrawal to pay $60,000 to transport her body to Arlington National Cemetery. No author given. The family of a female Marine who was killed during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021 was forced to pay $60,000 to have her body flown from California to Arlington to be buried. Nicole Gee, 23, was one of 13 service members who were killed during a suicide blast in the Kabul airport in 2021, per the Daily Mail. There were also 170 Afghans who reportedly killed in the attack that ISIS took responsibility for. The attack took place on August 26 during the evacuation attempt near the U.S. Embassy. Corey Mills, a Republican lawmaker and Army veteran, reportedly met with the families of the 13 service members who were lost in the attack. He was told one of the families was forced to pay $60,000 to have the body of a loved one moved to be buried. Honoring Our Fallen, a nonprofit that helps families of fallen American service members cover the cost of having Gee's body transported. Which is ridiculous that there was even a cost to this to begin with. And I'm thankful, by the way, for honoring the fallen to be able to do this, but I'm going to tell you right now that there were probably better uses for that money. That's something that the Biden admin should have been covering to begin with. Her body was initially transported to her hometown of Roseville, California for a ceremony, but her family was then told that they were financially responsible for moving her body to Arlington, which would be her final resting place per the report. Mills' office noted that the Defense Department was allowed to decline to pay for the transportation of Gee's body due to last year's change in the National Defense Authorization Act, according to Fox News. The change notes that the Secretary of Defense may provide a fallen soldier's family a commercial air travel use waiver for the transportation of deceased remains of a military member who dies inside a theater of combat operations. Mills said typically our fallen heroes are flown back home for a solemn service and then laid to rest, finally at Arlington with the utmost respect and honor. It's an egregious injustice that grieving families were burdened to shoulder the financial strain of honoring their loved ones. Yeah, you think? Supreme Court getting some good news this time. Supreme Court paves way for construction of Mountain Valley Pipeline to resume. For Melissa Quinn. The Supreme Court on Thursday paved the way for construction of the controversial Mountain Valley Pipeline project to resume, granting a request to lift lower court orders that halted the project and delayed its completion. The court's brief order vacates stays issued by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in cases brought by environmental organizations opposed to the 303-mile Mountain Valley Pipeline that will transport natural gas from West Virginia to Virginia. There were no noted dissents. Yeah, we are under a severe thunderstorm warning. My phone just told me so. And everybody on Instagram heard the vibration. Let's just have a look at that one here quick. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, yep, it does look like that is accurate. Let me just check the radar real quick. Bear with me. Because I can't go do it on my phone where I've got an app for that because it's streaming to Instagram right now. So I don't know why they were saying that we're under that warning right now, because it looks like it's just going to miss me. Like, just missed me. But pay attention and, well, if I disappear, because a tree landed across the power line. Let's talk about the stay. The court's brief order vacates stays issued by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in cases brought by the environmental organizations opposed to the 303-mile Mountain Valley Pipeline that will transport the natural gas from West Virginia to Virginia. There were no noted dissents. Jamie Williams, president of the Wilderness Society, one of the groups challenging the project, said in a statement, "The group will exhaust every effort to stop it." Allowing construction of this destructive and unnecessary fracked gas pipeline, proceed puts the profits of a few corporations ahead of the health and safety of the Appalachian communities, Williams said. Actually, I'll be moving this one up briefly, so we'll be skipping around a little bit here because I know this should have been up here with these ones. Construction for the project was approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, in 2017, but since then the project's been entangled in numerous legal challenges to federal approvals for its construction and operation brought by environmental groups. Much of the pipeline, however, is completed. Among the remaining construction is a 3.5-mile stretch through the Jefferson National Forest, completion of the stream crossings outside the forest, and final restoration of the construction environment. Mountain Valley Pipeline told the court environmental groups say the project is 56% complete to full restoration, as disclosed in an April federal filing. I think pipelines are cool, by the way. There's one that, like, when I used to drive to Kenosha from Redacted, where I used to live, there was one that was right along, I want to say that was Highway 50, no, it was Highway 11, going outside of Burlington, or there's just, it runs along the highway, you can see it go, and it's above ground, it's not an underground one. But I know it hooks up with the one that goes into Madison. Yes, there's actually a gas pipeline that goes into Madison, believe it or not. I didn't believe it when I first saw it. And it's just out there chilling. No leaks, no nothing. Natural gas and oil just pumping through it every day. I don't know if there are any around here. But in the midst of this, we have Elise Joshi, who decided to tell her story and her truth. Elise Joshi says, "I just mustered up every ounce of courage." I'll tell you why this is a bullshit story in a minute. To interrupt White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre and urge the Biden admin to stop approval of new coal, oil, and gas projects, including the Mountain Valley Pipeline. The climate crisis is here now, President. Listen to Gen Z, scientists, and frontline communities. Well, let's listen to what you have to say. Yeah, just pumping that gas, like the MIA song.
And it's really Excuse me for interrupting, but asking nicely hasn't worked out. 1 million young people wrote to the administration pleading not to approve a disastrous oil drilling project in Alaska, and we were ignored. So I'm here channeling the strength of my ancestors and generation. Will the administration stop
This was
approving
so
new oil
staged.
and gas projects and align with youth, science, and frontline communities from the North Slope of Alaska to Louisiana?
First of all, I appreciate your courage.
Oh my God! And everybody clap.
And what I'll say to you, and all you have to do, and I know you're speaking about a particular project, and I get that. I understand that. And
You have approved multiple projects since then, and more at a faster rate than the Trump administration. We need you to act on your campaign promises.
Declare
Please.
a climate emergency.
Which side are you on now?
Please respond. Please respond.
I was trying to, and I'm happy to respond. So look, this is an administration, and if you look at this president, you look at the action that he's taken, he has taken more action on climate change than any other president. He has an ambitious policy. He has. And I don't think you can deny that. I think you could agree with everything that he's put forward and he has done. And there's always more work to be done. He's going to continue to be ambitious. He's going to continue to take action. And that is something that he has promised during his campaign and will continue to do so. I'm happy to have this conversation with you outside of this speaking event at this time. But we can talk through all that he has done and all he wants to continue to do. And we can also listen to you and listen to what you have brought forth right now. But it's okay, guys. I want her to.
This is cut off. Again, this was staged. Now, the Newsweek reports video of activists confronting Biden had been viewed over 4 million times. From Catherine Fung. A video of a climate change activist confronting White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has been viewed over 4 million times on Twitter. Elise Joshi, Executive Director of Gen Z for Change, stood up in the middle of Jean-Pierre's remarks, interrupted by at the Voters for Tomorrow Summit on Thursday, interrupting the press secretary to confront the Biden admin over its climate policy. Yeah, I don't have to quote back this one here because we just listened to it. Audience members were heard snapping in support of Joshi while she spoke at one point. She was approached by an organizer who asked her to sit down. In response to Joshi's interruption, Jean-Pierre told the 21-year-old activist that she appreciated her courage to make her questions heard, which received applause from the audience. She recalled President Biden's actions on the climate change while noting that there was still more work to be done. I'm happy to have this conversation with you outside the speaking event at this time, at which point you'll be paid for your services. But we can talk through all that Biden has done and all he wants to continue to do. And we can also listen to you and listen to what you have brought forward right now, Jean-Pierre said to Joshi. And, well, Nuance Bro, showing some light on this one here. With the clip, quote tweeted from Elise Joshi, Nuance Bro says, she's the executive director for Gen Z for Change, which used to be called TikTok for Biden. And they've been to the White House multiple times to meet with Biden and even Barack Obama. Karine Jean-Pierre knows exactly who she is, and of course allowed her to speak. Yep, this was staged. Completely. And Nuance Bro apparently did a series on the Biden TikTok social media influence operations. But yeah, staged, photo up. Mr. Scott says, this girl wants $10 a gallon gas. No, she doesn't want any gas. She'll get back to you. A scapegoat I don't know what mustard was for, but yep, this administration is like a Punching Judy show. Let's talk about Ron DeSantis. We got some more stuff going on here. Severe thunderstorm warning in effect for this area until 8:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. For destructive 80-mile-an-hour winds, take shelter in a sturdy building away from windows. Flying debris may be deadly to those caught without shelter. Well, looks like we'll have to go wrap this up in the near future. From the New York Post, DeSantis Hamptons fundraiser flops while RFK Jr. and Trump rake it in. I can't hear the wind. Like, I'm looking at the trees right now and they look calm, but it might be the calm before the storm too, so we'll assess the situation as it goes. Ron DeSantis scrapped 2 Hamptons fundraisers last weekend due to lack of interest, while one, a rival Donald Trump, and upstart candidate RFK Jr. raked in massive piles of cash, one source told On the Money. The tale of the 3 fundraisers shows DeSantis' hopes for snaring Republican nominations are quickly fading as Trump dominates the GOP field and RFK Jr. gains momentum. Yeah, but RFK Jr. is not running as a Republican. This weekend broke DeSantis' campaign, one political fundraiser said. I don't know anyone who went, added longtime GOP fundraiser Carolyn Wren. George Santos could have pulled off a better fundraising swing at the Hamptons than Ron DeSantis did this past weekend. As On the Money previously reported, DeSantis had cut in half from $66,000 a person to $3,300, the price to attend the July 20th fundraiser in Southampton. But despite being discounted and heavily promoted, and with New York Republican groups sending email blasts the day before the event, attendance was underwhelming, a source with knowledge of the campaign told On the Money. One source blamed Shell Farley, a failed congressional candidate who promoted herself as the point person behind DeSantis' cocktail reception. She cheapened the event by sending it out to everyone on her email list. She scared people away, a top donor told On the Money. Donors who don't want to show up to a cocktail reception that's been advertised to tens of thousands of people. No, that's an excuse. Big money backers like Ken Griffin and Steven Schwartzman stayed away altogether. Worse yet, the campaign canceled plans for 2 other events because they couldn't find hosts. A source with knowledge told On the Money. The DeSantis experiment is dead, one source said. Donors are coming to his events because they don't see any return on investment. DeSantis' campaign did not reveal how much money the Florida governor's foray into the Empire State raised. Reps for DeSantis did not return On the Money's request for comment. So, a few things that are going on with this. Now, DeSantis does have a very hardened core of support. They think that he is the next coming of Christ. They're morons. But one of the problems, and I'm glad DeSantis ran, because it does hold up a mirror to what the electorate thinks of going back to the way that things were. Business as usual for the Republican Party. And we don't do business as usual for the Republican Party anymore. Mr. Scott says, if the wind blows towards the dark clouds, then you know stuff is going to hit the fan. Yeah, again, it doesn't appear that there's, like, the tree. Okay, now they're starting to move. We might pack that one in, because that tree is bending over pretty hard. I want to go for a little bit more, but we might pack this in here just a little bit. But I do want to talk a bit more about the DeSantis thing here before we go, and keep to somewhat of what is promised on this one. But I mean, I said this from the beginning. There's going to be some enthusiasm for Ron DeSantis because of the fact that he is a traditional conservative, and he used his position as the Florida governor to promote big conservative ideas. Going back to Jesus is my politician, Jesus is my president kind of ideas. And as I said at the time, that doesn't work in the Republican Party. That does not work for the situation that we're in. When the vast majority of your electorate came over from the Democrat Party because they were alienated by the progressives. And this is not going to sell to them. But he decided he wanted to try to mend the fences here. DeSantis suggests he could pick RFK Jr. to lead the FDA or the CDC. RFK Jr. might have an offer to run a federal agency in 25, but not for the party he's running to gain in the nomination from. Ron DeSantis, who's struggling to gain steam in the GOP primary, mused on Wednesday in an interview with Clay Travis on Outkick that he generally aligns with Kennedy's conservative views on the pinko-pox policies and vaccines. Those views, DeSantis indicated, could make him a pick to lead a federal agency with medical jurisdiction. And part of this, by the way, came from the fact that there was talks about DeSantis picking RFK Jr. to be his vice president. Bridging the parties, that kind of thing. If you're president, sick him on the FDA if he'd be willing to serve, or sick him on the CDC, DeSantis said, in response to a question about whether he would pick Kennedy as a running mate. In terms of being a Veep, there's 70% chance the issues that he may be averse to are based on. That just creates an issue. Well, Karl Rove had something to say about that. He was not real happy about that. From the Hill, Karl Rove roasts DeSantis for floating RFK Jr. to lead health agencies. This guy's a nut. From Dominic Mastrangelo. Longtime Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Karl Rove is blasting Ron DeSantis for floating the idea of Robert Kennedy Jr. leading U.S. health agencies if DeSantis is elected president. DeSantis, a candidate for the GOP nomination for president, suggested during a recent interview with conservative outlet Outkick that he would sick RFK, a well-known anti-vaccine activist, on agencies like the FDA and CDC if he were elected president, which, by the way, is hilarious because Ron DeSantis was probably one of the first people to come back out and say that he wanted to have a vaccine passport for Florida. And he wants you to forget about that, too. Calling the idea nutty, Rove pulled out his trademark whiteboard during an appearance on Fox News and said, "It's not just healthcare that Robert Kennedy is a conspiracy buff on, he's got lots of conspiracies." The 2004 election was stolen as computers switched nearly 250,000 votes from Ohio from Kerry to Bush, and thereby gave him the election. 5G is a mass surveillance tool, and the telecoms, the telephone companies, are in on it. CIA killed his uncle, Sirhan. Sirhan didn't kill his father, Rove said, listing off a number of unfounded claims that Kennedy Jr. has floated. And he defends Russia and Ukraine. It's all Ukraine's fault. Russia invaded them and is killing people. I mean, this guy's a nut, Rove said. You gotta love it when one person, in attempting to get under the Uniparty's skin, actually gets under their skin. You gotta love that. Alright. RFK is not getting Secret Service. From Insider, RFK Jr. complained about not getting Secret Service protection. The truth is very few candidates do, and I will side with the corporate media on this one. That is actually correct. Even the Donald didn't get Secret Service protection until he essentially clinched the nomination. Typically, in a packed field, you got to be in like second or third place. Which, I mean, technically RFK Jr. is in second place, but it's by a long, long shot. Unless he starts to close the gap and pull ahead, there's not really any reason for him to have Secret Service protection. DeSantis doesn't even get Secret Service protection right now. From Brent D. Griffiths. Long-shot Democrat presidential hopeful Robert Kennedy Jr. on Friday lashed out at the Biden admin for refusing to grant his request for Secret Service protection. a complaint that ignores the reality that many presidential candidates are not granted protection. You think any of these TDR Dems switch top Republican just to vote for DeSantis in the primary? Probably. I mean, I've done it the other direction. Back when I was still a Republican, I voted in Democrat. I'm in an open primary state. I don't have to change my registration to do so. In 2016, I voted Trump eagerly. Boy, what a mistake that was. But in the primary, I voted for Bernie. In 2020, I actually voted for Bernie as well. That's what I'd be gently suggesting if I was a young person influencer. Yeah, you can't vote in both. If you vote in both primaries in Wisconsin, your ballot is nullified. Alright, what else do we have? Since the assassination of my father in 1968, candidates for president are provided Secret Service protection, but not me, Kennedy wrote on Twitter. Kennedy's complaint comes with added personal resonance as the assassination of his father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., led Congress to extend protection to major party presidential and vice presidential candidates and nominees. But again, that's only if they're like at the top. Like if there actually is a security risk for them. And while I think a lot of people like to see RFK supplant Biden and go back into that more Union Democrat side and not someone who's controlled by the progressive movement, I don't see that in the cards for RFK Jr. So, that is what they're saying for that. We can probably finish this out here before the whole house gets blown down. You want to see somebody grasp at straws? I'll show you somebody grasping at straws from the Huffington Post. RFK Jr.'s latest tweet is being widely interpreted as a Nazi dog whistle. From David Moy. A tweet from the account of Democrat presidential candidate RFK Jr. on Friday used language that many observers say evokes the known Nazi hate symbol 1488. A post on the candidate's official Twitter account used the numbers 14 and 88 in close proximity. Here's the tweet. Since the assassination of my... Hold on, let's get an RFK voice. Since the assassination of my father in 1968, candidates for president are provided Secret Service protection, but not me. Typical turnaround for pro forma protection requests for presidential candidates is 14 days. After 88 days of no response, after several... And it trails off because he did a longer tweet. He put them too close together. He's whistling to his Nazi compatriots. Get a fucking life, you people. Jiggle your gollywhopper. Okay? From Como News, something that we were not able to get to yesterday, unfortunately. Multiple explosive devices used in bombing at encampment outside Seattle Hospital. From Jeremy Harris of Como News. An explosion at a homeless encampment outside Harborview Medical Center in Seattle was a result of multiple explosive devices being detonated, possibly in connection to an ongoing battle for control of the drug trade among the homeless, according to a newly released police report. The explosion happened on Friday morning at the encampment that sits between I-5 and the hospital in downtown Seattle. In a police report obtained by Como News, witnesses for the explosion said it was a targeted attack on fentanyl tent where 20 customers were inside using drugs. Witnesses stated minutes prior to the explosion that he saw devices and alerted others inside. Witness stated everyone inside the tent freaked out and exited by lifting the other side of the structure to escape. Witness stated that he then attempted to exit south due to hearing gunshots and flashing from the bush to the northeast, but he saw another IED south of the structure, Seattle police officer wrote in the report. Witness told police he heard someone yelling that the suspect was shooting at them. Video of the fire recorded multiple explosions and thick smoke barreling towards the hospital. Fire crews responded and doused the flames, and the scene was turned over to the Seattle police. People who survived the bombing told investigators that the former leader of the encampment had recently been replaced and returned with a gun to rob people inside the fentanyl tent, the report states. A witness said the former leader of the camp was known to make explosive devices from plastic buckets and had been teaching people in the encampment how to make the improvised explosive devices. The suspect is also connected in court filings to the drug trafficking operations in the area of 12th Avenue and Jackson Street in Seattle. A second witness corroborated seeing buckets placed around the serving tent inside the encampment. Another person in the encampment told investigators that there have been conflicts stemming from the theft of $80,000 in fentanyl and a murder. You have $80,000 and you're homeless? Or let me rephrase that, the ability to get $80,000 and you're homeless? Really? The encampment was destroyed in the fire, but within a few days was being rebuilt. The Komonu's crew found tents, gas cans, propane tanks have been brought back into the encampment by Tuesday. A video camera was installed on a tree with a view of the encampment. Police reports said that people who control the encampments use the cameras to monitor activity at the drug tents. A drug camp caught fire nearby earlier this year. Responding officers found stacks of cash, drugs, and guns inside the tent used to host drug users. I hate to sound unsympathetic here, but a lot of this sounds like the problem solving itself. It really does. Brew is joining us over on the Instagram side. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. We're going to be closing up here pretty soon because I think that tornado is going to come and suck this building up. Alright, from the Daily Wire, an interesting twist in the case of the Obama chef. 911 call record from Obama's chef's death had something missing that other 911 calls had, according to a report from Hank Berrien. Unlike other 911 calls recorded in the Edgartown Police Department's logs that were made the night that Barack Obama's private chef Tafari Campbell drowned, the reason for the 911 call involving Campbell was left blank, according to a report. Campbell drowned on the July 23rd while paddleboarding on Great Edgartown Pond. Police have refused to release the name of the person he was with, although dispatch calls confirmed there was another paddleboarder in the water with Campbell. At 7:46 p.m., a 911 call was reportedly made from Wilson's Landing, a paddleboard launch site, to report trouble had arisen with Campbell, the Daily Mail reported. That call was made from a woman who, roughly half an hour later, was reportedly using a boat nearby, possibly looking for Campbell. We met with the reporting party. She is on the boat with two individuals, and they're going back and forth as well, one of the rescuers stated at 8:23 p.m. that evening. A male paddleboarder who had gone into the water appeared to briefly struggle to stay on the surface and then submerged and did not resurface. Another paddleboarder was on the pond with him at the time and observed him to go under the water, police said. Authorities say they located Campbell's body using a boat with an attached side scanner, sonar system, and aerial support from MSP and U.S. Coast Guard helicopter crews. I didn't know about his last chef also passing away 5 years ago. That's interesting. That does raise some questions for sure. So, and like again, I want this to be nothing. I do. I really want this to be nothing, but more and more interesting circumstances come up about this. I would rather just say, hey, a guy was paddleboarding, he lost his balance and he drowned. But when the story changes this many times in 72 hours, yeah, I gotta come back and ask some questions here. When I said the tornado was going to suck up my house, Mr. Scott said, maybe your house will land on Hillary Clinton. No, it would be Nancy Pelosi. No, it would be Hillary, because that would be the witch of the East. The wicked witch of the West was the one that survived. Who was it? Courtney Nill over on Twitter had posted the question and says, if Nancy Pelosi is the wicked witch of the West, who's the wicked witch of the East? And I quote tweeted and I said, yeah, there's no question about that. It's Hillary. All right, 2 more, and then we're going to close out. I'm not going to do Twitter trending tonight just because of the weather situation. But we'll close out on these last 2 articles here. From Reuters. MasterCard moves to ban cannabis purchases on its debit cards. That sounds about like a good reason to have your debit card moved from MasterCard to Visa, if you have the ability to do so. In fact, if this is true, then I will be calling my bank probably tomorrow and saying, hey, let's do something about this. From Niket Nishant and Tanay Dumal. MasterCard has told financial institutions to stop allowing marijuana transactions on its debit cards, dealing a blow to an industry already on the fringes of financial system in the U.S. Most banks in the country do not service cannabis companies, as marijuana remains illegal at the federal level despite several states legalizing its medicinal and recreational use. As we were made aware of this matter, we quickly investigated. In accordance with our policies, we instructed the financial institutions that offer payment services to cannabis merchants and connects them to MasterCard to terminate the activity, a spokesperson for the company said on Wednesday. The federal government considers cannabis sales illegal, so these purchases are not allowed on our systems, the spokesperson added. Sunburn Cannabis CEO Brandy Cobb said in a statement, this move is another blow to the state legal cannabis industry and patients and consumers who want to access this budding category. Well, the first thing the government needs to do is decriminalize. Not legalize, of course, decriminalize. Yeah, Mr. Scott, well, Mr. Scott lives in Colorado too, so like he's firsthand on this and says, no weed stores accept credit cards, most banks won't deal with them, and they have ATMs with $6 fees. Which that's a captive industry, and dude, if I had a dispensary, there'd be a fee-free ATM sitting out there. It'd be like a quick trip. One of the problems that I have with this, now, if you're doing this on the credit card, buying weed on credit, I would actually look at this completely differently. But, I mean, this is supposed to be a representation of your money in a digital format. The debit card part of it is what bothers me about this, not the credit card part of it. Like, okay, well, you're going to take out a line of credit to go buy a bunch of weed. So here's your interest payment here, but technically we're buying it and then you're paying us back for it. That I could understand. But this is a representation of your money, your cash on hand. And I don't care for that. All right, and the last one. Yeah, Mr. Scott says this causes problems because weed stores end up with piles of cash and become targets for robbery. We got to get through the please donate to us now button. An outlet that I almost never use on this platform, by the way. The Guardian. This era of global boiling has arrived, says UN Chief as July set to be hottest month on record. Yes, global warming is no longer the fear porn because so many people laugh at it. Now we're global boiling, from Ajit Niranjan. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said, after scientists confirmed July was on track to be the world's hottest month on record. Which again, I believe is bullshit. Mr. Scott says, they regularly get robbed and I halfway suspect most of the robberies are inside jobs. Everybody be cool, this is a robbery! Any of you fucking pricks move and I'll execute every goddamn last one of you. Never seen that movie. Know what movie it is. Never seen it. And I like Tarantino too, and I still have never seen that movie. Like, no lie, I went to the theater and watched Inglourious Bastards in the theater 7 times. I like Tarantino movies. Climate change is here. It's terrifying. It's just the beginning, Gutierrez said. It's still possible to limit global temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only with dramatic, immediate climate action. Gutierrez's comments came after scientists confirmed on Thursday that the past 3 weeks have been the hottest since records began, and July is on track to be the hottest month ever recorded. And again, never mind the unseasonably mild summer we've had for the remainder of the summer. Global temperatures this month have shattered world records, according to the World Meteorological Organization and the EU's Copernicus Earth Observing Program, stoked by the burning of fossil fuels and spurring violent weather. The steady rise in global average temperatures, driven by pollution that traps sunlight and acts like a greenhouse around the Earth, has made weather extremes worse. Humanity's in the hot seat, Gutierrez said at a press conference on Thursday for vast parts of North America, Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's cruel summer. For the entire planet, it's a disaster, and for scientists, it's unequivocal humans are to blame. Again, reminder that further north from here, from where I'm sitting, where I grew up, in May, not in July, in May, we had 104 degrees. In 1997. Where I live now, further south, we have not cracked 100 degrees yet this year. It was a regular in the 90s for us. This is not the hottest month on record. It is for some places, but this is not the hottest month on record where I live, by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not even close. Mr. Scott said, speaking of inside job robberies, Save the Children regularly gets hacked for millions of dollars. I bet my boots that it's shenanigans. Just Google Save the Children hacked and you can see what I mean. Yeah, we hit 99 last week, says Mr. Scott. Yeah. No, we have not cracked 100 here yet. It's possible. And we've beat 100 recently. Like 2 years ago. In Wisconsin. So, they're going to try to turn up the fear porn and make it worse. And make you scream and shout. And do all kinds of other things to make sure that you vote Democrat for the rest of your life. And the question that I will have, that I will always finish out with before we head out of here for the night. Again, reminder, I'm skipping Twitter trending right now because even though the sun is legitimately shining behind me, they're telling me that there's going to be a severe thunderstorm with major winds. So I am going to take the precautionary route on this one But my question for all the climatologists out there, with their degrees in liberal arts, is how much money does it cost to change the weather? Give me a number. How much money do I have to give your politicians to change the weather? You know what the worst part is? They'll never give you a number. All right, let's head out of here for the night. All right, interesting night, you guys. Porch Boys are on. I don't know when they're starting, but I know that they're on tonight because I've been seeing the announcement in a couple of various places here. So, as I've told you at the top of the show, you guys should go check that out. I'm going to get out of here before the tornado pops in and destroys the building that I live in. What's actually making me a little bit nervous is that, and I saw the wind in the tree and it's calmed down again. But like where the window is pointed, I see north. So I can't see what's coming into the west, and tornadoes do lead. They sit on the leading edge of the storm, so anything that's going to be coming, I'm not going to see from sitting here. But let's throw some outro music up here for the week. All right, so another week. It's done. It's gone. We're going to head out of here for the week. Thank you very much for everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat and hung out throughout the week. Go check out Hello Brutiful. Even though I think that our VOD is down currently, that'll be back and uploaded on the YouTube channel and on my Spotify channel as well as soon as everything is edited down to where it needs to be. So come back and join us for that. It's going to be a great time. And go check out Porch Boys after this if you can go find them over on YouTube. It's going to be a great time as well. I'll be back here. I got to play it by ear for this weekend. I want to do a video game stream. I'm going to play video games this weekend. There's one thing that I do have to do this weekend, but I'm going to do some video games as well. But whether I turn the camera on or not, I have not decided. But we will be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. So come back and join. It's going to be a fantastic time. I love to see you guys here, see the chatter, and see what's going on with that. Take care. Have a good night. If you are in a storm path, stay safe, and we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.